Okay, great. So you've come a long way. You've covered a lot of ground and hopefully you've grown in leaps and bounds. We've talked about punctuation when we talked about commas, semicolons, periods, and colons. We moved on and talked about apostrophes. We talked about who versus whom, the subject verb agreement, dangling modifiers, misplaced modifiers, all of these things. But now, having those things is one thing. We also want to add to that element the plan that we're going to execute when we walk into that exam room. And we're going to do that by talking about the ACT English strategy, right? We got to have a battle plan. And this is the plan. First of all, understand that the ACT English section is going to have 5 passages. And with that comes 75 questions. That means each passage will have 15 questions. And you only have 45 minutes to answer all of these questions. I don't know about you, but I feel as though that's really unreasonable. It's an unreasonable short amount of time to go through 75 questions. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any control over the time. Unless you have time accommodations, you don't have any control over this. Ideally, if I would have it my way, to read that passage, which is about 350 words to 600 words, I would need about 20 minutes to really answer all the questions correctly. I don't know if you're like me, you might take a little longer than that or a little less, but I just feel as though 45 minutes for 5 passages is not enough. Since we cannot control that, we are going to put a plan in motion to help us answer as many of these questions correctly as we can. Now, if you are awarded any accommodations, we'll talk about that also and how that factors in into this plan. Okay. Now, if you don't have accommodations, that means you have regular time, 45 minutes. What I want us to do is take this English section and break it into 5 mini tests, okay? Each mini test is going to be 9 minutes long. And the best way to prepare for this is to start timing ourselves from day one, from the very beginning. Once we finish going over these concepts, we're going to have you attempt very many practice tests because you only get better through practice, right? And you're going to start timing yourself from the get-go, all right? What I actually recommend is that you go out and get one of those really old school analog watches, the ones that have the little minute hand and the hour hand, and get used to looking at that clock and every 9 minutes knowing that you need to be wrapping up a section and moving on to the next one. Okay, I'm saying we need to get the analog watches because you're not really allowed to bring those digital watches. Apple watches or Android watches or Samsung watches, none of those are allowed. So if you can get your hands on those old school analog watches with the minute hand and the hour hand, that would be ideal. Put yourself under that time pressure from day one. It is going to pay dividends in the future. So how are we going to actually approach this? We are going to read from the beginning, and remember, you're answering questions as you go. This is not like the reading section where you have longer passages and you read the entire passage and then go answer the questions. No, the English section has questions embedded within the passage, so you want to answer the questions as you go. All right. And you're going to read the easy questions and skip the hard ones. All right. We want to maximize on the low-hanging fruit. What I have unfortunately seen some students do is they will read the first passage and work through the questions, get to the 12th, 13th, and 14th, and 15th question, and they spend so much time on these last 4 questions that it eats up all the time they would need then to answer the last 2 passages. So they only really look at the first 3 passages and leave a lot of points on the table. We are not going to be those people, okay? I'm completely fine with you answering the last 2 or 3 questions by guessing. If you really have no idea on those harder questions, I'm okay with you skipping those. I would rather us make our best guess on those few questions than miss the opportunity to look at the low-hanging fruit and answer all the low-hanging fruit from the last few passages, okay? So yes, you will feel the answer get progressively more challenging. The first few questions are pretty doable. As you move along the test and find the last 4 or 5 questions in the passage, you will feel that they're a little bit more challenging. If you miss the last 2 or 3, that's okay, because you're missing while making your best educated guess. You're not guessing blindly. And that's going to be our plan for the ACT English. You're breaking this test down, these 5 passages, into 5 mini tests. Each test will be 9 minutes long. Now, what if you have time accommodations? What if you're given double time? Well, if you're given double time, then that means you have double of all these. You'll have 18 minutes per passage if you're given double the time, right? If you're given time and a half, then you would multiply this by 1.5 to see how much time you have. That's how you would calculate your strategy depending on the accommodation that you have. If you have double the time, double these times. If you have time and a half, multiply these times by 1.5. But the plan remains the same. All right, I hope this helps, and please stick to the plan. Start timing yourself. I cannot overemphasize the importance of starting to time yourself from the very beginning. That's it.